from our roads.
I've lived here all my life and I haven't seen the roads this bad, I don't think.
To the streets.
People in need that don't have no other option and no ideas, no resources. A lot of them don't even have hope.
To personal safety.
Possible stabbing that Anchorage police say left a woman with life-threatening injuries.
We sit down with Mayor Dave Bronson and challenger Suzanne LaFrance.
I believe we have so much potential, and I'm excited about our future.
We have a bright future, even as we have quite a few challenges.
To get real answers on the issues facing Anchorage now and in the future.
In less than 2 weeks, Anchorage votes on the next mayor of Anchorage. Joining us today, Mayor Dave Bronson, and of course, your challenger, Suzanne LaFrance. Thank you so much for both being here. So there are a number of important things that we want to talk about tonight, but we really want specifics this evening. And the goal tonight is to plan for the future. So with that, there are no time limits, but we do have moments where no one can dominate a conversation, and so I will interrupt and move us back to the topic at hand. So first off, I want to know, Ms. LaFrance, what is the most important issue facing Anchorage?
Well, right now, the most important issue is getting our municipal government back in shape. We've got a number of crises, especially with staffing. There's a staffing crisis at APD. We're down 50 officers. The books have not been closed. The financial audit hasn't been completed. And also, we've got issues like homelessness that we're simply not making progress on.
And what do you think? What do you think is the most important issue facing Anchorage?
Well, the polling's clear that the most important issue to the voters at large, citizens at large, is the homeless issue. But the real most important or single greatest threat physically to the city is Cook Inlet natural gas, the shortage thereof. Just 2 days ago, we met with the technical group that we 11 mayors created, and it's even more dire than we thought. It's closer than we thought. And but I understand day in, day out, the voter sees the homelessness on the street, and it is a great challenge. I spend probably 60% of my time dealing with that single subject. So it's very important to the people, therefore it has been for 3 years extremely important to me.
Yeah, and so let's talk about homelessness. We're going to show some video. Right. You know, the area beside Cuddy Park was cleared. We're going to show you the video of some of the things and living conditions people have showing here. So it's a mess. There's trucks, cars, people are camping, but this is also like what people consider their homes. Mayor Bronson, the city has allowed public camping in the area near the Cuddy Park area in this site. How have you been able to have this under your watch?
Actually, the city is not allowed. We're not allowed to allow people to break the law, and public camping is illegal. They form where they form, but then again, let's remember one thing, is that for those people to have a place to live, they need a shelter. This is linear. You build the shelter space, you build enough shelter space, we're compliant with federal law, and then those folks have a place to go, and they can't be outside like that.
But we've had 3 years of that kind of a situation.
Right.
So that's a long time. So why isn't there anything in the meantime?
Oh, ask her.
Well, I think it's for you to answer too, because you have to work with her.
I've presented plan after plan to the Assembly for a large shelter in Tudor Elmore. If you've lived in this city, if you're not living under a rock, you know about this. I came in and campaigned on the issue. When I walked in, I adopted a plan of a large shelter, a sprung steel shelter in Tudor and Elmore. We spent a long time going through the public process. We satisfied the public process. The Assembly at that time, led by Ms. LaFrance, voted for the building, paid for the building, they appropriated for the building, and then in the middle of a concrete pour, they stopped it. So if we had that space,
But let's go back to that, the idea that they stopped it. Talk about the reasons that it was stopped, though.
Sure, and you know, Mr. Bronson came into office with the idea of the sprung structure, and initially money was approved for that project, but you know what happened was it proceeded without the approval that was required for the contract. And so it was Mr. Bronson's administration that actually stopped the pour, a pour that never should have started in the first place because the law was broken and the rules for spending public money were not followed, and the costs had ballooned and ballooned. And at that point, it simply was a matter of fiscal responsibility. We could not approve that project for it to continue after the law had been broken, after the costs had ballooned, And even now, there are still questions about, what would be a viable operations plan? Is this even a structure that meets the requirements for snow and wind loading? There are just so many specifics that have never been resolved.
And why not just go through the process?
Well, it's real interesting. Suzanne, what did it balloon to? What did it balloon from? See, what are those numbers? At the end of the day, the cost of not dealing with homelessness and having a shelter is far higher than dealing with it. We have a contracting process in this city that we've adopted on some major projects. And the project is you go by phases. So you approve the entire project. Suzanne spent $2.8 million on this shelter. We spent it, it's gone. And then she stopped the program in the middle of a concrete pour. Within a week, we came back, we caught the mistake. We went to the assembly, Lance Wilbur.
But the mistake had already occurred.
What's that?
But the mistake had already occurred.
Yes, we caught the mistake. We went to the assembly and said, we made a mistake, let's reappropriate. John Weddleton, assembly member, former assembly member at that time, says, well, that's happened before in the city several times. So let's just keep going.
Do you think that's happened before in the city?
I mean, maybe, but the fact of the matter is that the cost ballooned by millions of dollars.
How many millions?
Another 5, another 10 when you consider the operations plan. It's my turn to speak.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So the costs continued to increase, and while there is, certainly a cost to homelessness and the crisis response that we've seen over and over, again, it just wasn't good stewardship of taxpayer dollars to say yes to something that didn't have a viable plan and that had already failed.
And so, Mr. Bronson, when you were here last time for our last debate, when there was 4 of you,
right,
you said something twice about homelessness, and we'd like to delve a little bit deeper into that, so we're going to play a little piece of video.
If the taxpayer traveled around to Anchorage, especially downtown, and saw no visible homeless on the street, they would believe that we solved this problem. We hadn't, but it would be a big step forward.
So hearing that, the phrasing, the way it's phrased, it sounds like out of sight, out of mind. There is not a homeless problem that has been fixed. It just is out of sight. Is that how you feel?
That's what people would think. That's the earbud caught up. But I remember the statement. That's what people would think if you didn't see homeless.
But it wouldn't have solved anything. You just wouldn't see it.
Well, of course not. We have 3,700 homeless in the city, and we're dealing with a problematic population right now, 250 to 400. It's going to get far worse. On June 1st, we have 874 people hitting the streets because we have some hotels that are shutting down that have been dedicated to homelessness. So it's going to get far worse.
So then if the idea is that they're just not seen, is it fine for these hundreds of people to live in the woods as long as we don't see them?
No, why would you think that?
Because you have already said that it wouldn't be solved even with the shelter.
No, if people were not living on the streets, I'll just repeat that. So if people drove around town and didn't see any homeless on the street, they would think this problem would be solved.
But is it solved? But is it solved?
I said it wouldn't be solved.
So it's not the mayor's job to resolve that, or at least make it so.
So the mayor comes up with plans as the executive branch, as the CEO. The mayor comes up with plans, and they go to the assembly, and they seek appropriation. The assembly has complete 100% control over the budget, except for a small little budget that the mayor's grant budget. They have complete control. So we go to them with a plan. We gave Ms. LaFrance and the assembly 2 plans. One was in April of 22, one was in July of 22. And these plans were about 1.5 inches thick. We bound them, we gave them to them. We actually had a very public meeting at the Luzak Library on this. We presented it to them. They don't like the plans. These were operations plans for the Tudor Elmore facility. At some point, you have to admit that you have to have a place for these people. Everyone has to have a place. Across the street, we've got Cuddy Park. Those people have to have a place. Where are they going to go? And so Ms. LaFrance supports $500,000 toilets around town with stainless steel seat covers in the middle of winter. I don't, 20 below, that's going to be an interesting proposition.
And ask you a question. Mayor Bronson has accused you in radio ads as the former assembly chair of making decisions that directly created or worsened the homeless situation, cost taxpayers more than $200 million without a solution.
247.
How do you respond to that?
Well, I certainly would go back to the point about the navigation center. It's the mayor's job to come up with a plan and get support on the plan. Now, it is true we were given when I was on the assembly, I haven't been on the assembly for a year, but the mayor's team did provide a big binder. Mostly it was standard specifications. I think there was about maybe 3 pages of actual project information in there. So it didn't contain a viable plan. And again, it's about fiscal responsibility. It's about proper stewardship of taxpayer money. And there was not enough there to justify, continuing to move forward with that project. I have to say, it's been 3 years, and we've seen the same thing over and over again, where Mr. Bronson's initial plan failed. And as mayor, that's the point where you come back with a new. It's not. There's no navigation center.
I know you killed it. You led the effort to kill the plan. That's the point.
Okay, I'm not sure.
That's why we're having this conversation.
Not sure what you're talking about with that piece there.
Do you feel like you killed the plan?
No, I don't feel like I killed the plan because the mayor's team broke the law, didn't have proper stewardship, didn't follow the rules for spending public money, and actually proceeded to initiate a contract that wasn't approved. Public money wasn't approved. Came back to the assembly. I couldn't approve a contract for a project that had gone off the rails and still didn't have a viable operations plan. Mr. Bronson had every opportunity to make that project succeed. And that's on Mr. Bronson. And again, when something doesn't work, then you try again and you work hard to get buy-in and earn trust and confidence to move forward for the good of our community.
Ms. LaFrance, when asked about your plan for dealing with the homeless crisis at our previous debate, here's what you had to say.
As mayor, I'll bring people together, stakeholders from across our municipality, from the private sector, from the faith communities, individuals, agencies, and providers. And we will coalesce around a plan to move our community forward and address this issue.
One of the criticisms that Mayor Bronson and others have raised about your strategy is it's more meetings. It doesn't solve the problem, and many meetings have taken place over these last 3 years. What would you do as mayor moving beyond meetings?
Yeah, as I've been talking to folks in the community, people have come up to me and said, whether it's individuals, members of the private sector, members of the faith community, and different segments all across our community, I want to bring ideas and resources to the table. And, there isn't a table right now. And yes, I've heard that, we don't need another plan to put on the shelf, but we do have to have meaningful discussion. And there are people who have said, yeah, I want to invest in these solutions. I want to bring these resources. And, until you have clarity, too, on who is doing what's the role of the municipality? I mean, you've got to have that coordination. Otherwise, you get what we've been getting.
But we have had 3 years of ongoing meetings. So what is the action plan now?
Yeah, the action plan now is to actually have a plan, because there's been no plan as far as like the municipality takes this piece. And
so then what is your plan?
Well, my plan is to have shelters in place. I'm going to have a plan within 100 days. And, I do not, let me be very clear, I do not support 1,000 person shelters in East Anchorage or anywhere in the community. And so we're looking at smaller shelters. We're looking at places where, people can connect with resources and supports, whether that's treatment, and get into housing, because we know that's what works. And again, there are providers out there. There are people who are like, I can help in this way, but it's a really disorganized system too. And the municipality has some resources to bring to that to help organize it. So if a bed is available here, but this person, has filled out this form, well, they have to fill out another form. There's some really basic administrative stuff that could be done too to make it more efficient and to facilitate that, because you don't have that coordination now.
Mr. Bronson, what is your plan B for this navigation center? Because it seems clear at this point, after 3 years, that the East Anchorage 1,000 bed shelter is not happening. So what is the plan B?
Well, first I'll tell you what it isn't. And it isn't carrying on like we did since she came into office in 2017. Through SAP, we've spent $247 million on homelessness, much of it going to the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness. And
False.
The executive director is Meg Zalatel. We haven't been successful. We weren't successful since I came into office. At some point, physics demands certain things, and that is people have to have a place to be. A large shelter has an economy of scale. So this is what I think Ms. LaFrance doesn't understand. We have put smaller shelters out to bid, and no one bids. Because there's no expertise out there other than, say, a Henning or a 99 plus 1.
There isn't a plan beyond the center in East.
Yeah, there is a plan which could work, which would involve quite possibly Northway Mall coming online by a private group.
Would that be one large shelter?
That's about 417,000 square feet. About 300,000, that 417 could be dedicated to homelessness. There is a plan there for vocational training, for homeless sheltering, for feeding. There's a lot of work being done on the west end of the building as we speak. We don't even know who the group is. It's being done rather in silence. Would I be happy with that? I think that's the larger the footprint to encompass all of those services, wraparound services.
It again, though, is a large shelter. And you said how many people could stay there?
I didn't. I said the size is about, I think it's 413,000 square feet, I think is the aggregate of the entire footprint. 300,000 from what I'm being told from the group that's interested in operating it is about 300,000 foot.
But you don't know how many people could stay in that place?
Well, you'd have to make a determination on how many square feet per person, and then just
I guess
divide down.
how does it make it different than the East Anchorage shelter then?
Well, the East Anchorage shelter is 29,700 square feet.
So
yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah. So what is your opinion about this?
Well, you know, the numbers that Mr. Bronson has thrown out, I think he's talking about the federal pandemic relief that our community received. Some of that went to shelter, some of that went to build housing in our community and actually house people. I have to say that number that you keep referencing in relation to the Coalition to End Homelessness, I mean, I don't know where you got that number.
That from OMB.
Sounds, yeah, and you know, the books haven't been closed. The financial audit hasn't been done now for 2 years. It's not totally surprising that, given you don't know how much money the municipality has, throwing around numbers like that. That number is just a made-up number.
We know how much money.
How much?
Okay, well, Tuesday night we went $605,000 over the limit, and we broke the law. My office caught that. And we went to the assembly and says, hey, you made a mistake. You've got less than an hour to make a decision on calling a motion to reconsider so that they wouldn't be illegal. I thought, you know, people say, you should have just let them go illegal because it's illegal. And I says, no, that's not good governance. Let's call the assembly leadership, which I directed. They did that. And at 1 o'clock, 48 minutes ago, they started the meeting to reconcile that. That's good governance. I want to work with the assembly on that. I think they made a mistake. That's fine.
I do want to move on to talk about another issue that's very important. You have something to say?
I do. I mean, I just feel the need to address this $25 million figure that Mr. Bronson throws out. The Coalition to End Homelessness never received that amount of money. I mean, that's just false.
From a hot topic to a cold one, Ms. LaFrance, you have been very vocal about the administration's snow removal plan over the past 2 record winters. And recent political flyers from your campaign, you say, under Bronson's leadership, he failed to keep the roads plowed on a timely basis for the past 2 winters, resulting in citywide shutdowns and record-setting school closures. So, Ms. LaFrance, you're saying you do things differently, hiring more people and earlier contractors and audits and changing the relationships between the state and the school district. How is this different?
In his term, Mr. Bronson was advised by the operators that there was likely to be a shortage of snowplow operators in the municipality and that the jobs weren't competitive. And instead of bringing that information to the assembly to ask for more money, nothing came of that. And even since that time, an audit of not just equipment, but the number of operators and an increase, to pay so that those jobs are competitive, hasn't happened. So there's been, no change. And with equipment as well, we need to make sure that we've got the right pieces of equipment. And other cities do this. We're not the only winter city out there. There are ways to do a better job with snow removal. And in our community, that means better coordination with the state as well, coordination with the school district, and also working with the public too to manage expectations, to provide information about when plows will be coming through. And I'm committed to coming up with an approach that works better, and I think that there are lessons to be learned from other communities who manage it quite well.
What's your response to that? Do you think we did a good job?
I think our Paul Van Lanningham and our crews did an excellent job under the conditions. Let's just remember the 2 winters she's talking about were preceded by 10 winters that had almost no snow. And she was there for 5 of those, I think, 10 years. And she made no changes. But at the end of the day, this is what we had. Early in November, starting on the 9th of November, the city, downtown, we got 40 inches of very wet snow. Coincidentally, in that same snowstorm, first time in the history of Ted Stevens International Airport, Ted Stevens had to stop taking arrivals, and we diverted nearly 40 cargo aircraft to Fairbanks. That's how bad it was. So first you need to understand the scope and scale of the challenge that's facing. Then this notion that she would somehow coordinate with the state and the school district. So when it comes to the state, I went to the governor and I called him. He says, Governor, I need to plow some of your streets, because our big streets in the city are all state-owned streets. And I says, I really need to plow your streets. He says, Dave, I don't do that. Call the chief. So I call the chief, and the chief says, yeah, sounds good. Call Ryan Anderson. I call Ryan Anderson, Director of Transportation of DOT, and he says, yeah, sure. He says, plow what you need to plow. He says, let's get our foreman together, Paul Van Lanningham and his guy, and send me a bill.
So that was a proactive thing, so why not do that now? In the summertime,
it's
have these
illegal
plans
to plow
in
a
place.
city street without legal protection.
But can't you beforehand say, in the event that next year is a huge snow year, let's go ahead and make plans now together with the state?
We do that. It's called TORA, Transfer Responsibility Agreement. That's like Fifth Avenue is owned
So then
is
why
owned
didn't
by.
it work this past time?
Because it didn't apply to those. We didn't have TORAs. No one put applied a TORA to those streets. I am not allowed. When I have a grader or on a state street, I'm required to lift the blade. I'm required to.
But I guess now, have you had talks? Because we have had 2
Yes.
winters of record-breaking snow. Are there talks now of possibly buying more snowplows or raising the wages for those workers, or working with the state and the school district more proactively so that everybody's on the same place?
Well, of course.
So we won't be shut down if we even have record snow this year, if you're mayor.
Well, it depends on the level of the agreements. If we have to do the same thing, we'll do the same thing. I understand for a lot of people, this was incredibly difficult. I was getting beat up by political allies, plow the streets, and I says, go to our interactive map, find out whose street it is. And I had a really good friend, supporter of mine, and he says, Dave, this intersection, I won't give it, but he says, this intersection, I says, go to the map and find out who owns it. He says, dang, both streets are state-owned. And he says, dang, I'm going to call Mike and chew him out. Well, I said, don't do that. I says, we're working on it. We got the things plowed. I sent him a bill for 10 hours of work for 7 pieces of equipment. I sent him a bill for $31,000. We were paid, and that's how you coordinate. When you want to talk about the school district, same storms, same set of storms. We had a snow building up on Rock Ridge, and it was Abalupa Elementary.
And
so
that
I
was
went up.
that was the one that went unplowed, and those students had extra days off. Isn't that the one?
It didn't. There was a LRSA that was responsibility for that snowplow, a local road service area, and they weren't keeping up. So I went up when I had a meeting with the community council leader and the principal. We sat in our conference room, and I says, "What's the problem?" I had already called Paul Van Lanningham, so we're in the conference. And we're looking at the road, and Paul Van Lanningham is driving up and down the road. So I call him, I see you out there, and he says, I got 2 graders on the way. I don't know how much more coordination you can do with the school district, because we had teachers standing out.
Yeah, that was 2 extra
directing
days
traffic.
that teachers had that those students were out of class. And I do want to move on, though, Mr. Bronson. This is what you had to say
how
about
much more
Mrs.
can you
LaFrance's
coordinate?
criticism.
You know.
She thinks as mayor she's going to come in and start creating snow plowing plans on her own. That's called micromanagement, and that's precisely the last thing we want. I don't do that.
So in hindsight, would you have changed anything with snow removal for the past 2 years?
Well, last fall, I added $1.5 million to the snow plowing budget. To their credit, the Assembly added $1 million. That was good. I'm not sure at this point if we're through that 2.5, but then that carries through the rest of 24, so we'll see what happens in the next November and December, but we'll give them more money if they need more money. But at the end of the day, Ms. LaFrance has to remember, when you criticize snow plowing, you're criticizing the people that do it.
No, I'm
Am I responsible for snow plowing?
him.
I'm responsible for everything.
I would like her to respond, because if you are you're responsible for everything in the city.
Then I'll keep responding in a minute when she's done. Go ahead.
Well, I
Suzanne.
haven't
go
had
ahead, but if you are responsible for everything in the city,
Right.
then wouldn't it stand to be that you also could take some of the blame, because you also are kind of pushing a lot of it to her in the Assembly?
I didn't push anything to them.
What do you think?
And thanks, because I haven't had a chance to speak on this issue. When I'm criticizing the snow removal or lack of the last 2 winters, I'm criticizing Mr. Bronson as the CEO of our city. I'm not criticizing the employees who have worked hard and done
Yes,
the
you
very
are.
best that, no, I am not, that done the very best they could under this mismanagement. It is the job of the mayor to take responsibility and to ensure that everyone has the resources, the employees have the resources they need to succeed. And that just simply hasn't happened. We need accountability.
Does that mean we need new street maintenance leadership, or that we need additional resources still?
Well, it means we need a new mayor. We need a mayor who will work with folks to have a plan and say, hey, yeah, we can do better here. Other cities do this, we can too. And, to ensure that we have enough operators, they are competitively compensated, and the community can attract operators.
Does any
as well.
leadership need to happen and changes as far as street maintenance?
I'm not aware of anything there. I'm talking more about the executive leadership and setting the tone and ensuring that the municipality has a plan in place, ensuring that coordination with DOT. That would be great too if the governor is also in support of the coordination and ensuring that Anchorage streets that are under the state's purview get done, but making sure that's all done ahead of time and everybody knows what everyone's doing. Those are the issues I'm talking about.
And let's talk about 2 of the harshest words that you've used to describe each other during this campaign. Mr. Bronson, you've called your opponent woke, and Ms. LaFrance, you've called Mayor Bronson incompetent. I'm going to ask each of you for specifics. Mayor, what does woke mean when it applies to Ms. LaFrance?
Well, my first exposure to the word, because you're asking for a definition, so I'll go back a little over 3 years. I'm campaigning. I'm in neighborhoods. I'm walking, door knocking with a young guy who's a waiter, and he's, by his own description, he says, "Yeah, I'm very left," but he's helping me run, and he's a waiter at a large restaurant, a popular restaurant downtown. And he says, and we were in the truck warming up, it was February, and he says, "Dave, you got to really start paying attention to this woke thing." I go, "Wow." Literally, the first time in my life, I must have been living under a stump somewhere, that I heard about it. And I says, "What?" He starts talking about it. He says, "It's taken over the world.
So
you got to pay."
What is it?
Well, I think by example, I would explain it as when I see men playing in women's sports, I think woke. When I see anti-Semitism on campuses, which is raging right now, I think woke. When I see, and I'll just call it what it is, when I see men in tutus gyrating in front of little boys in a public school, I think woke. Drag queen reading hour, let's call it that. So if those aren't the right examples, then they're not.
What does that have to do with her and governance?
Well, it's a political ideology. It's a far left political ideology. It's the newest version of a far left political ideology. It comes into rampant public spending, overtaxation, inefficient government.
I guess explain how men dressing, or how people dress or how anti-Semitism comes into things and men and women's sports. How does that come into government and spending too much?
Well,
What does
no,
that
you're
have to do
looking
with
for
spending?
icons of a worldview. Okay, I'll call it this: tax and spend liberal. She's a tax and spend liberal. Yet she's proven it. She's a prolific
What do
spender.
you
She never saw
What do
a
you
tax
think? Do you
she
think
didn't like.
about this?
Well, local government is all about doing the work, getting the job done. The job isn't getting done. It's not about left or right. It's not about red or blue. It's about doing the work.
But when he uses the word woke, what does that mean to you? And what do you think he's trying to say about you?
I think that he's trying to distract from the real issues. The fact that, the snow plowing didn't get done for 2 years, that we've got a staffing crisis at APD. We're down over 50 sworn officers. And, the books haven't been closed now for 2 years. The financial audits aren't done. We've not made progress on homelessness. I think this is a distraction. It's intended to make people afraid and to scare them that I'm some.
Is that the reason you bring up the word incompetent when you were describing Mr. Bronson?
I bring up the word incompetent because it applies. I mean, for the last 3 years, we've seen scandals, lawsuits. We've seen people, in key positions who do things that are the opposite of competent and put the municipality at risk, whether that's the former HR director or the former, head of the health department. We've seen, staffing vacancy rates, hundreds of vacant positions at the municipality, and a vacancy rate at the health department hit like 40%. And that jeopardizes programs, it jeopardizes services. And again, local government is all about good governance. It's about providing services so that people can go about and do their jobs, so that our businesses can go about and do their jobs.
And what do you think when she says incompetent and describes you that way?
Well, unfortunately, Ms. LaFrance has never held an executive position in her life. So when someone new comes in to a job, I came in and there was a lot of people that packed up and left because they didn't want to work for me. A lot of people. Every executive knows this. When they come in, they usually bring in in a team. So I started with a team, some of whom did not play well in the sandbox together. And it took about a year to a year and a half. And right now, we have built a team. No one has left since last summer, at least until about an hour ago. The OMB director resigned.
How come that person resigned?
Well, I was putting on my jacket to come over here, and she handed me her letter of resignation, and she said she resigned because of, I can't work with this assembly anymore. I can't do my job. I haven't even finished reading the letter, but she gave me a verbal on that, and that's fine. We'll figure it out.
What is your response to that one?
My response to why the individual may have resigned, I don't know the specifics of it. It's a shame to lose another person. I know that the mayor
What do you think about him, though, again, blaming the assembly for this person leaving?
She blamed the assembly.
She blamed the
in
assembly.
the letter. She actually says I could release it to the public. I don't think that's appropriate, but if she wants to, that's fine.
Well, what do I think about that? I think I don't know the specifics, but I know it can be challenging working with the assembly. You've got 12 people. You've got 12
bullying.
people.
Of course, I've got people quitting
12
because the assembly bullies them
you've
in
got-
public.
Let's move on to another question. We just saw one of Mrs. LaFrance's campaign flyers. Listen to one of your campaign ads.
A choice between one-party rule with complete control of our city or a balanced government that represents and respects both sides of the political spectrum.
So, Mayor Bronson, in that ad, we just heard you talk about bringing both sides together, yet you're using terms like woke and you're using that in a negative way. How do you define the respect that has to happen between these two bodies?
Well, let's take a little walk back in time here about 3 years. I come online and I get almost immediately attacked with incompetence, so that's okay to you, I guess. But at the moment I mention an identifiable political ideology, I'm attacking. I think twice on the assembly, on the dais, an assembly member has asked me to resign in public. on TV, on the dais. I just let it go. I'm not going to get down and throw mud on the assembly. I just don't do that. It's not worth it. So 3 years of that, I just sit and take. Now we're in a campaign, and we've got to speak the truth because there's so much on the line. But I'm not going to sit here in a campaign, and hopefully this campaign will be over in a couple of weeks, and we can get back to normal. But I work with the assembly. I work with them a lot. But at the end of the day, and the essence of that ad that you played is that as much as I like working with the assembly, I just worked with them the last 48 hours to help them fix a problem that they created for themselves or for the city. 30% of the time I disagree with them probably about that. I don't work for them. When I don't oppose people, I don't oppose Suzanne. She's actually a nice lady. At the end of the day, is what I oppose is bad ideas, and for me to stand by and say nothing when they've got $500,000 toilets.
But what do you say to that? Do you think this has been a respectful relationship in the way the assembly and the mayor have acted towards each other? It seems very combative, like a very combative relationship. That a lot has happened.
So I think it's really important to take a look at just how our local government is structured. We've got two branches of government. Both are strong. We've got a legislative branch that's focused on overseeing the finances and setting policy, and then the executive branch, the mayor, that runs the municipality. They're different jobs, totally different jobs. And as taxpayers, as members of this community, we rely on each branch to do their job. There's always been some tension. And
do you respect the mayor?
I definitely respect the position of mayor.
The position?
And well, I mean, it is one where whoever is in that position needs to follow the law, needs to set a tone of respect, and to encourage positive, productive dialogue. And respect each branch's role, because they're different jobs. They're very different jobs. And as I mentioned, there has been historically tension, but is it productive tension? That's where it needs to be respectful. And again, as I tried to say earlier, you've got 12 people on the assembly who have been elected by their constituents to represent their constituents. These are smart, hardworking people who are doing the best they can for their constituents. And so you're going to get some conflict. You are. That's just the nature of it. But the mayor has this opportunity to come in and find that common ground for the benefit of our community, to work together, because that's what it's all about. Both branches are there to do the work of the people.
So let's talk about that, because there's a two-way street. And
let's move on to one thing, because I do want to get to the questions, because we have had community councils who have submitted questions as well. So here's one question that we heard a lot about: affordable housing. So the question includes Rabbit Creek in South Addition, and it's about Anchorage's land use rules on what's known as Title 21. There's a proposal in the Assembly to decrease the 15 residential zone down to 5. According to sponsors, the goal is to increase housing in Anchorage and make that housing affordable and attainable. Ms. LaFrance, is this the best way to increase affordable housing in Anchorage?
Well, we definitely need to do things differently. And when we have an opportunity to make it easier to access the code, when it's clearer, when we can cut red tape, we need to do that. Now, that needs to be balanced with a really robust public process. And I know that there are folks in the community who feel like, that process and the role of the Planning and Zoning Commission hasn't been correct or hasn't been robust as it needs to be. I mean, it's a balance, right? I mean, we love our neighborhoods, but the reality is we have a housing shortage, and we are constrained by having too few housing units. And if we're going to increase that number, which we need to do, we're going to have to do some things differently.
What do you think?
Well, sitting there and listing the problems, that she has 5 points that she always makes: housing, police, we know the list that it's a checklist for her. And she lists these problems, and she just rephrases it over and over. Where are the answers? So when we have 874 people on the street on June 1st, where do they go? Because when you sit in this seat, and KTUU or ADN or the Ship Creek Group or the 907 Initiative goes after you, and they
I guess
907
what's the
won't
question?
because it's run by Chris Constance, campaign
what's your
manager.
question though? Is it what is
where are they going to go?
go?
Because you have to put people in beds. Just pick homeless. You have to put people in beds. What is your solution?
But this is also I want to talk about housing for everyday
Okay, I won't ask
Alaskan.
questions. That's fine.
No, you can ask questions, but I think we need to stick to things instead of just long questions to get right to the question with each other. Is how do we have affordable housing for families in Anchorage or for couples in Anchorage? Like, what are the barriers that are preventing us from having this happen?
We need to be able to build homes so that it's profitable for the people that build homes. We've got to create land to put on homes. That's why I signed a modified methane gas agreement with the Klutna Corporation. That brought on 1,200 lots in Eagle River. I supported a year and a half ago, actually 2.5 years, starting 2.5 years ago, supporting the Holton Hills project, which is 152 homes in Girdwood. Suzanne voted against that.
Well, how do you make those happen, though? So now you have that area with the methane for the 152 homes in Girdwood, 100 and 1,200 in Eagle River. So when will those houses start coming online?
Phase one which is I think 24, 27 homes, is supposed to start this summer. You would have to ask Kyle Foster when he's going to start specifically, but that was the agreement. There were 7 phases to that project, and you have to complete and sell for phase 1 to start do the financing for phase 2. And that project came about, quite frankly, thanks to Senator Murkowski, because she brought in $4.9 million of money, grant money, to make the sewer, the infrastructure work. And that was the tipping point, and we can thank Senator Murkowski for that.
We also heard from 2 different community councils that want to know what you're going to do to make Anchorage a more attractive place to live. From Government Hill, the community council says, what are your ideas for making Anchorage a place for people to move to rather than out of that we've seen for the past decade?
Well, first I want to note that on June 1, you will still be in the seat of Mayor, Mr. Bronson. So that's your issue, to figure out how to house those folks. So just, wanted to remind you on that date. What will I do to
It'll be the NAV Center in Tudor and Elmore. Oh, you killed that.
But it's not happening, though. So what would happen then? Like, the NAV Center is not happening.
We need a very large building that's not a stadium, not the Sullivan Arena. By the way, the Sullivan Arena, we brought that back online, and there was 2,000 elementary school violin players there yesterday, and I thought that was a pretty good visual for the Sullivan coming back online. She created a homeless camp there, and
I do want to move back to Government Hill's question, though, too.
Sure.
What is the idea to make Anchorage more attractive and a place for families to move to and for young people to live here? How do how do you get more restaurants? How do you make this place more attractive?
Yeah, well, it certainly comes down to, do people want to live here and can they afford to live here? And it starts with getting the basics right. We've got to have a staffed up police department, public safety, ensuring that the street, I
guess beyond those, though, what are the ideas?
For affordability, well, more housing. Bringing down the cost of housing. That's a big reason why people don't move here or live here. Childcare is another opportunity we have. Ensuring that families have access to quality and affordable childcare. Schools are a big reason. And yes, that's largely in the purview of the state, but the mayor can be a champion of our public schools. And I would be a champion of such, because I know how important it is for livability and investing in our parks and natural spaces, leaning into the assets that we have, like with the Chugach. I know there are plans too for, like downtown is another big area. It starts with safety and more housing downtown and making it, a place where people feel proud, and Anchorage a welcoming place for visitors and people who live here.
How do you make Anchorage more attractive for people?
So what I have done is we came into office, and Block 41 was a large construction project, about $200 million for Peach Holdings, and they were stuck. They were at war with the previous administration. They had been stuck, he said, for 11 years.
I say Peach Holdings has had problems with the city for several years.
Okay, so we worked with them, and we unstuck that project. The Key Bank building got done. Santos is bringing in, I think, 225 people into that building. They're in the move right now. That's great progress. There was a project, Sean Debenham's project on, I believe, H Street. That was stuck. We signed an agreement using ACDA to help finance that. That project we dedicated here a month ago. We've worked on multiple projects. So there's Northlink at the airport. The municipality, the mayor had authority to free up a problem that had come up there. I signed that document. In Northlink, that's 1,200 jobs during construction, about 200 jobs in operation, to include, and I'd really like to say, childcare, on-site childcare for the workers out there going forward. That's a real win. That's how you do it. You don't get to solutions by sit there after being 6 years on the assembly and not raising the pay of the police department and then complaining why.
Let's
I'll just keep going.
Let's move on to public safety now.
Yeah, you know, I kind of get to the punchline, and you always say, "Let's move to the next question."
No, you got to have this shortened up. We only
have
an hour.
We're going to finish this. So this is the thing. I came in and I gave the police department the largest pay increase in the history of this municipality. She had 6 years to do that. That's how you retain police officers.
Let's stick with public safety. So crime is visible around the city. We're going to show some video. This past week, there was 2 stabbings, a deadly shooting at a major drug raid. This all happened in different neighborhoods. How do we make Anchorage safe? Ms. Bronson, or Ms. LaFrance.
Well, you know, we need a fully staffed police department, and we are down over 50 sworn staff officers, and then another 30 or so support staff. We need to invest in the mobile intervention team, the mobile crisis team, and ensure that we've got a strong partnership between the community and APD and the municipality as well. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about having good schools and good jobs, and that's correlated as well with, a safer community. I mean, we know there's a lack of mental health supports and access to treatment, and then, homelessness as well is a part of needs to be part of the municipality's public safety response.
So what do you think the answer is then? Is it more police? Is it more substance misuse facilities?
It's everything. South Central Foundation is bringing in quite a few beds on Tudor Elmore, not on the intersection side that we're on, going to be on. That's how you do it. The folks at Providence are robusting their treatment beds. But at the end of the day, when it comes to homeless, sheltering has been ignored by this assembly. Sheltering has been ignored by this assembly. So what they compelled me to do is to house 200 homeless people in the maintenance facility for garbage trucks at solid waste service. We call it cold weather sheltering, not solid waste service. That's what we're forced to do because we don't have a navigation shelter that is purposely designed to take care of homeless and very challenged people.
So why not?
Sheltering.
But we keep going back to the navigation center, but the rules were not followed in the beginning.
That's not true.
Is that true?
She just talks on and on about that.
That's true. Not true. The rules were not followed. And again, the mayor has an opportunity to bring forward a different plan.
Here we go.
Well, so what is the plan B then? Because we keep mentioning
the navigation center. A large building. It would be probably ideal to have, again, Northway Mall be that space because it's so large. But the trouble is she doesn't support a 29,000 square foot building, but she supports a 400,000 square foot building.
What about the idea, though, that it is a larger place still, and it is still in one neighborhood that is impacted by it, and historically a neighborhood that has to deal with this quite a bit?
And the question is,
why does it have to fall into one building? Why not have the smaller places, and why does it have to be? You've mentioned Northway Mall since before.
Well, I came on in this job 3 years ago, and Northway Mall was being considered by the assembly, and good on them, by the way. It's a site it's apparently almost abandoned. The group that owns it seems to want to get rid of it. The roof collapse has been dealt with. At Planet Fitness there, I think it would be a good site. But see, they want that. I came into office, they wanted Northway Mall at 400,000 square feet. And then I come in with a 29,000 square foot building, and they say it's too big. I mean, pick a side on this, just pick a number.
What do you feel about Northway Mall?
So I think it's really important to do an accountability check. And Northway Mall came up as a potential site a number of times by the prior administration. Again, the Assembly and the mayor have different jobs. The mayor brings a plan. The Assembly, may add to it, have some other ideas. But at the end of the day, the Assembly doesn't tell the mayor what to do. Different jobs, different branches. And so, yes, I understand that at one point the administration was considering the Northway Mall. It didn't have a good business case as far as, the roof would have been really expensive to fix, and so it didn't move forward.
It's fixed.
Okay, I'm saying at the time it was not, and maybe that has changed. I haven't been on the Assembly for a year, so I don't have those details.
And now we're going to have a little bit of a lightning round where we're looking forward to getting answers from both you. So we'll start with policy and move to what you love about, stop policy and talk about what do you love about Alaska?
Me?
Yeah.
Just about everything. Hunting, fishing, flying. I love this city. I really like the park trails. I kind of, when we lived closer to downtown, I focused on Chester Creek and coastal. We would ride there. Even after we moved into South Anchorage, we would come down. I'm a big advocate for the bike trails. We've been working quite vigorously on getting the Fish Creek Trail done. That's a real jurisdictional challenge, and then the Ship Creek Connector. That's, if I could get those two things done. I know some people don't care much about bike trails. I do. I think those would the bike trails. Our park system is the crown jewel of the city, and unfortunately, we've got too many homeless people living in our parks and on our trails. Because they don't have a place to go, because we don't have a shelter.
Right,
Chet
so
always touches.
We have to move on to a
Yeah.
faster
Oh,
lightning
yeah,
question.
of course, we gotta
Yes, we
move
do.
on.
What's your favorite part?
I love the Chugach and the trails. I love Kincaid Park and the Coastal Trail. I love the diversity here and the wonderful restaurants we have and the people. It's a beautiful place, and I love how, just growing up here, that sense of helping each other and, really being together.
Okay, and these have to be faster too, because these are lightning round. So favorite go-to social media platform?
You know what, I'm just not on social media.
You're not
I
on social
prefer
media?
in person.
What about you?
Yeah, I don't do social media. My campaign does, my office does, but I don't.
And then other than Anchorage, favorite place in Alaska?
I would say Prince William Sound.
Prince William Sound?
Yep.
I would say our cabin near Lake Louise.
Oh, very cool. And turning some lighter topics, who is your favorite band and why?
Oh gosh, our family's just been listening to Noah Kahan for so long, because that's what the teenagers listen to, that I'm not even sure anymore.
What about you?
Band?
Band.
I'm a little bit old, I guess. I still like the Beatles. Sorry.
One of the classics. Favorite food place at the Alaska State Fair?
Oh, to me?
Yeah.
Let's go with cream puffs.
Cream puffs?
Anything that's got meat.
That's good. And so our final question, and we're going to give you a minute or so you can leave the final word. Why do you want to be the mayor of Anchorage?
Well, I am the mayor of Anchorage.
But why do you again want to be the mayor of Anchorage?
No, I know. I'm
teasing.
We've accomplished a lot since I've been in the face of, quite frankly, great opposition, great adversity. We've been attacked by every outside group you can imagine, outside funded group. And my team, my executive team, we have pressed on. I would put my executive team up against any team in the state, corporate or political, or government. And we have accomplished a lot. We have turned this city around from mask mandates and coming up on vaccine mandates to the shutdown of over 220 small businesses, sadly, and I think we're on our way. We've got a lot. We've brought in over $1 billion of investment, and a lot more to come. We've got a group that wants to invest $250 million in this city, and I'm meeting with them next week. And all they wanted to do was build our NAV shelter for us for nothing, and the Assembly turned it down last week. So, but anyways, I think there's a lot yet to be done. The homeless is a challenge. I'll be honest with you, again, as we come full circle, cooking with natural gas, that's starting to keep me up at night.
And on our podcast, I do want to get into more of this donor. But why do you want to be the mayor of Anchorage?
And is this the closing?
No, you have 1 minute for closing statements. I'm sorry, this is your closing.
Well, this is an amazing place, and we have such incredible potential here. And as a lifelong Alaskan who grew up with that feeling of opportunity, you know, I want that for my kids. My husband and I, this is the place where we chose to raise our family. And so we talk about the issue about, you know, will they want to live here? Are there those opportunities here? And I love this place. I love my community. And I'm excited about being in the role of mayor because that's where you can really make a difference and bring people together and do that work for everyone who lives here.
All right. And thank you to both candidates, Mayor Dave Bronson and challenger Suzanne LaFrance. We have received a number of questions, of course, from our community councils. We're going to continue that with our political podcast pipeline after this one. Please check out our podcast, Last Week's Political Pipeline. The video will also be available on our website. Ballots have been mailed and must be returned by May 14th. Thank you for joining us for this Anchorage Votes.
Thank you.